to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm an author and publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we publish books of all types and genres. So if you have a book in your head, a manuscript ready to go, or even 300 pieces of loose leaf shoved in a drawer, and yes, we get envelopes filled with loose leaf every month here. Visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I am so delighted today to be joined by two authors who have undoubtedly unleashed themselves. John Coon is the author of Alien People, Chronicles Book 1, so we know that there's plenty more to come of that. And Katharine Wibell, the author of The 12 Tasks. So first we'll meet John Coon, and he writes of Alien People, that Calandra Menakar dreams of becoming her planet's top astronomer. So when a probe from a place called Earth rockets into her solar system, she's determined to uncover its secrets. And when the foreign craft transmits a message of peace, Calandra secures permission to voyage to the unknown orb, despite brittle bones that could make space travel fatal. Well, I'm sure there's a heck of a lot in there, and I'm feeling maybe it wasn't even all that friendly. Welcome, John Coon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Such a pleasure. And this is book 1. How many books are there?
For now, the plan is a trilogy. The second book will actually be released in July.
Oh, okay. So it's pretty much on the home stretch, if not finished.
Yes.
Fantastic. And when do you have a plan for the third book, an outline, whatever you might do?
Yeah. I have an outline. I have a direction where I'm going, and a good idea of what I want to do with the characters in the third book, and it's going to be a really satisfying conclusion to what I started with Alien People and what I continue with in Dark Metamorphosis, which is the one coming out July 13th.
July 13th, fantastic. Well, tell us a little bit about what got you started with Alien People. What inspired?
So Alien People, true story, I actually wrote the original rough draft during the summer between my high school graduation and my freshman year of college. I decided one day I wanted to write a novel just as a fun summer activity. Spent 3 months, wrote the rough draft out, and I had a really good idea. You've seen a lot of these different sci-fi movies and books where they have aliens making first contact with Earth, but it's always from the Earth perspective. It's always from the human perspective, where the aliens are kind of like the mysterious entity or the hostile entity. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do a story where the alien point of view is represented, where Earth is the mysterious hostile entity? And so that was what kind of spurred the initial idea, and I developed it and cultivated it from there.
You make a really good point that we always presume that we're the good guys. Well, I think that's just the way we are, and that anybody who might be out there, ooh, scary, and never think about the fact that they're probably a lot more frightened of us.
Yeah, and it's fun kind of just taking those classic ideas and tropes and turning them on their head and doing like a 180 turn on them and looking at them from a different perspective, because a lot of times when you're willing to do that as a writer, it brings out so many more rich stories and characters, and you see things from a perspective maybe you'd never considered.
Well, I think that's
the story.
Yeah, I think that's important for people in just general, so to be able to see through anybody else's eyes. Everybody sees things differently, so that's a skill that not everybody has, so that's pretty neat.
And that's a great tip. I speak with so many writers and aspiring writers who might even say, I don't have any ideas, or the good ideas are all taken. John, even just certainly there are books about aliens and movies about aliens, but you took it from a different perspective, and just kind of shifting whose voice and vision is a great way for someone who doesn't think that they have a creative idea of their own to kind of turn it around. I like that. Very cool. Now, is this your first time writing? Did you just, decide in school, you know what, I'm going to write a novel, and you just did, or have you written before?
So I actually have worked as a professional journalist since 2004. Currently, I write for the Associated Press and Athlon Sports, covering college sports and the NBA and Olympic sports. And so I've always been doing writing for the most part, but I've always wanted to be a fiction author. I mean, that's a dream I've had since I was like 12 years old. I like to tell the story that when I was 12, the way I got started seriously thinking about writing is my older sister wrote a bunch of little short stories, and I decided one day, well, I can write short stories too. And so my parents had an old manual typewriter set up on a table in the kitchen. And I went back there, put in some, and I distinctly remember this, put in some orange colored typing paper, and started typing out stories. And the stories were about these 5 kittens that go on crazy adventures. And they were based on pet cats we had at the time. And I typed up a bunch of these little stories, 9 in total. But that's where I really developed my love for writing, developed my love for storytelling, and I've just carried that on as I've gone into my adult years, and I've got like tons of different manuscripts of completed short stories, novel outlines, and then obviously published novels as well.
Wow. Katharine, were you also a young kid when you decided you wanted to be a writer?
Yeah, actually, the book we're going to be talking about in a little bit actually was based on a bunch of childhood characters developed when my sister and I used to have all our imaginary games. So kind of like you, it was this very young childhood passion that kind of stirred, that creative juices, I guess you could say, as to get inspired to become an author.
Fantastic. John, how is journalism different than writing creatively? Tell us a little bit about that, since you have experience in both.
So the main difference with journalism is you're kind of restricted in how you approach story and what you write about, because obviously you have to, like if you're covering a basketball game, you have to write about the game. You can't go off and write about some other random topic. But there are similarities in the fact that you have to figure out how to tell a story, and you have to, engage a reader and give them kind of, like we talk about in sports, that you want to go beyond the box score, that you want to tell readers why something happened and not just what happened.
Gotcha.
And I guess that's similar to fiction in a lot of ways, because fiction, you're not only just telling readers what happened in the plot, you're telling them why it happened and why the characters acted that way and why they made those decisions and what are the ramifications.
Right. Well, that's great to have experience with 2 different types of writing. I'm sure that writing fiction makes you a better journalist, and writing on that level makes you a better fiction writer.
Definitely. With journalism, one of the things that's helped me with in terms of how I approach my fiction writing is dialogue, for example, conversations, because I interact with so many different people, from so many walks of life. I can create authentic conversations in my stories. I can create authentic personalities because I've got so much material to draw on, from interviewing different athletes and coaches and interacting with other reporters, interacting with fans. It just gives me this treasure trove of material to where I can create a character, and the character rings true for my readers because I base it on, this mishmash of personalities I've interacted with in real life.
Right. Well, just like that, they say, write what you know all these people, so they end up having influence on the book. How about other authors? What would you say people who like this kind of book will probably like Alien People? Who are your influences there?
So, what as far as sci-fi goes, my two of my favorite authors that I love their material because they're entertaining, but they also make you think. Are Michael Crichton,
Mm,
who wrote Jurassic Park, Andromeda Strain, a few other really cool sci-fi books, and Philip K. Dick. He's the one behind Blade Runner, Minority Report, a few of those. The thing I love about those two authors is they draw you in with compelling stories, and then they make you think about it. I mean, it's not something where you just, mindless entertainment. You go and turn your brain off for 2 hours or whatever. They actually, show you the ramifications of everything that takes place. They show you, consequences of a character's thoughts and actions, and they make you kind of question the way you see things. And I love that. I love being able to make somebody question how they see things.
fantastic. Well, our next author today is Katharine Wibell, and Katharine's book is called The 12 Tasks. And she writes, the precarious balance between two opposing forces has begun to shift and threatens the very existence of life throughout the universe. Only the Jed, the prophesied savior, has a chance of thwarting a catastrophe that could destroy the cosmos. And the next Jed is predicted to be a child of the earth. Katie awakens on a world far from her own, a world bound in magic, one of the 12 that hosts entities of vast power and might. She is suspected to be that savior. Well, please welcome Katharine Wibell. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me today.
Did I say that correctly? DJED is Jed?
Yes, correct.
Oh, look at me. Okay. Katharine, where are you from?
I was originally from Georgia, though currently live in New Orleans.
Oh, okay. Because that's an interest. What language is Jed? Is that Swedish?
It's actually Egyptian.
Oh, okay.
Ancient Egyptian reference.
Look at that. So is that what influenced your book and other writings? Are you interested in Egyptian writings or just things from other countries?
I've always really loved mythology, so the source material of most modern fantasy. And so because of that, a lot of my writings, a lot of my book series have different references to different mythos. And at the 12 Tasks and the rest of the Jed Chronicles, it was kind of fun for me to write because I get to feature mythological entities and beings from all sorts of mythologies from around the world, and not just Egyptian, but I do touch on that.
Well, I certainly do see a King Tut kind of thing behind you. What is that?
Yes, that is Tutankhamun. Yes, there was a time when I really was interested in Egyptology. So yeah, Tut was a joke my parents gave me on my 25th birthday.
Well, if I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw that glowing in the dark, I think I'd be a little worried.
He's a good spirit. He's a protective spirit.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. And he inspires these books. Now, this is a book series or one book?
It will become a book series. The 12 Tasks is the first, and there should be between 7 or 8 when I'm finished with them. It all depends on how I break them up.
Okay. So how far along have you gotten in outlining? And that brings up the question, do you outline, or are we just going to kind of see where this goes?
Oh, I'm a person where before I even begin the first book, I usually know how many books are going to be in the series and their core premise. I usually already know the main characters and the themes, so I already kind of have them more or less blocked out. The second one, I'm hoping it would be nice to have released before Christmas time this year, but it all depends on getting it to the editor and getting everything ready in time. But I have written the first 3 and already know what the rest of the books will be like.
Oh, fantastic. Now, you
Cool.
said you usually like this is not your first rodeo. So tell me about your other writings.
I have one complete series called the Incarn Saga. It's a 4-book series, and that one is a shifter fantasy, a war fantasy. So that was my debut series, and then currently I also have an adult novella series pertaining to Nordic mythology. So it's all Viking lore, and that one I have. The second one is actually going to be released later this month, but they're a fun little quick reads if you like fantasy.
Oh, well, I
Very
think
cool.
a great time for quick reads because everyone wants, a little summer beach read,
Yeah,
not getting too involved in things, which is good. Our attention span shrinks as the sun comes out.
I feel that.
So you said in general, before you start something, you've outlined enough to know where things are going. Have you ever had that experience that things go completely in a different direction and you didn't expect that?
Usually the highlights, the main points, they stay the same. But I have had characters write themselves into the book and subplots that I didn't expect, or little side stories come about that I originally didn't plan. So some of that is, yes, the stories do kind of take on a life of their own at some point along in the writing process. But for the most part, like I said, I already know the end game of each book and how they break apart. So that will probably stay the same.
Oh, I loved the way you called it that some characters write themselves into the book. I've never heard anyone say that. Sometimes characters write themselves out of the book and they die and you didn't expect it to happen.
That happens too.
John, how about you? Are you open to letting your characters write their own stories in some cases?
Well, yeah, I mean, like Catherine, I start out with, some basic like main concepts in mind, main characters in mind, but and I will do like an outline as a guide to start, but then I deviate from the outline considerably as I'm writing the story because, the character choices and what, their actions and their thoughts and everything will take it in different directions than maybe I intended originally. And I realize, this doesn't quite work what I have on paper. This works better what they're trying to do
Right,
as
right.
I'm developing the story. And it turns out better because then your story is character driven and you do have your basic framework in place, but it's fun. It's surprising when you get to point A from point A to point B in an unexpected way.
And this is so freeing for, I'm always thinking about our aspiring writers who are watching the show, which basically means everyone, because surveys say that 90% of the world wants to write a book. So basically everybody is an aspiring writer. And like I mentioned earlier with you, John, that many people are thinking, oh, I don't have any ideas. The next hurdle they seem to hit after I don't have any ideas is, oh my gosh, I can't think of all these things, as if they think they are supposed to have planned every last bit. And hearing from two successful authors that that's not really the way it goes down, is it?
No, I mean it's bite-sized pieces. It's step by step in how you develop an idea into a finished novel.
Absolutely.
Because I'll have people tell me that they're like, oh, I don't even know where to start. I don't know how to put this idea down and all these characters down on paper. And I say, well, here's how I start, write down the idea. It only needs to be like 2 or 3 sentences. Then from there, start writing down the characters and everything you know about them, everything that comes to mind. And then from there, start, outlining the plot beats of your story and figuring out where you want to go with the story. And then after that point, you can start writing, and it'll be a lot easier because you've already put all these different things down. You've already given a lot of thought to it. And
Exactly.
so it's right there in the forefront of your mind. And that's not to say you won't have writer's block occasionally. You won't have times where you hit that wall creatively, but it's a lot easier to get through those moments when you've invested that time to really just think about it and ponder over it and
Absolutely.
jot everything down.
Yep. Katharine, your protagonist in the 12 tasks is named Katie.
Yes.
Tell me about that choice, because you are probably the first I've seen that from.
Well, the 12 tasks was the reason why, and the stories and the characters are the reason why I actually did pursue a career as an author, because as I might have mentioned a little earlier, they came about from my childhood play with my sister, through our imaginary play over the years. We lived in the country in Georgia, and running around all the fields and everything, we developed our own alter egos and all sorts of characters and their backstories and all sorts of worlds. The series actually has 12 different worlds featured and different dimensions on those worlds, so a little undertone of some sci-fi, even though I would qualify it as a pretty high fantasy. But coming back to it as an adult, I have upgraded characters and changed little details here and there, but I had always promised myself I was going to keep my alter ego with my name, because she was, so much of my childhood. So she does have my name and a lot of my personality characteristics in there. And it's been fun working on her, because I kept having to remind myself how I thought and how I acted at different ages. So she starts at 13, but each book she's a year older. And so I kind of have to pause me, how did I view the world at 15 or 17? So that's been fun.
Oh, that's an awful lot of fun. Very introspective. I'm not sure we all want to remember the way we thought.
Probably some parts.
Now, you said something else curious. You said that you weren't sure yet how many books it was going to be. I think you said 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
And how many have you outlined already?
For me, I have probably 7 outlined. It just depends again on how big the final book will be and if I need to break it. When I was working on my first book ever, I had to realize I had at some point stop and say, okay, I need to wrap this one up, because I didn't want to have a 2,000 pager on my hands and don't know what to do with.
Yeah, it's really hard to print those.
Yes.
And then you get into the George R. R. Martin problem that the last book is and J.K. Rowling, the same thing. That last book was 3 times as long as any of the previous books. That's a common thing, that we end up, trying to shove everything into the last book. John, is that going to be your problem at the end of your trilogy? Is book 3 going to be much fatter than books 1 and 2?
Hope not. Book 1 was pretty extensive. Book 2 is a little smaller, thankfully, but okay. Book 1, and Katharine can probably speak to this as well. It's when you start out a series, it's kind of hard as an author in the sense that you have to introduce everything, and so you want to include so many different things, and it's hard to find a cutoff point and say, now wait a minute, I might be interested in this, but I'm probably going to lose my reader if it gets past 1,000 pages or, whatever.
That's a good point you make too, about making sure your reader is interested, not just you. I'm sorry, Katharine, you're saying?
Oh no, all I was saying is, for me, I just came up with, everybody has their own formula and figures out, I guess, a comfortable thing about writing and the length. For me, I always, for my full lengths, aim between 40 and 44 chapters, and the chapters for me, when I'm typing them out, I kind of have a range of how many pages I'm trying to get to, so that way I can kind of keep track and kind of know when I need to start going over, when I need to wrap up that story arc here or there. Just kind of gives me an idea when I'm trying to finish things.
Yeah, it's not easy. I've jokingly said that 2 of the hardest parts of writing a book is getting started, because a lot of people just getting the ball rolling, but I think getting finished, knowing when to stop the whole process.
Oh, yes.
Is also a thing, or else, like Katharine, you'll end up with, maybe a 20-book series, and the last book will just be enormous. Katharine, tell me a little bit about your influences in writing. Who do you just love?
Well, for me, again, going back, I like pulling directly from mythology or mythological sources. So my bookshelves are stocked with ancient epic poems. I have the Ramayana, the Odyssey. I know that makes some people cringe because they're probably forced to read it. when they were, in high school, but I was that kid who read it for fun. And so when I went to high school, I was like, had a dog-eared already. I was like, I'm ready. But, I do Icelandic sagas. So those things I personally enjoy reading, and that's where I kind of am influenced by. But for more modern-ish authors, kind of what you were saying, you mentioned J.R. Martin, we have Tolkien, Rowling. I mean, they all pull a lot of their ideas from older mythos. So I do like that when I see people referencing mythology and bringing it to a modern viewer in a different way.
Right. Did you happen to go to college and major in Egyptology or something like that?
No, I double majored in fine art and psychology with the emphasis in animal behavior. I always wanted to be Dr. Doolittle at some point in my life. And so,
Really?
yeah, so neither was writing, but different influences.
Interesting. Now, so you must be an animal lover.
Oh, I am.
Okay. Do animals play any part in your books, or you like
all the series? You'll see different references. My first series, again, shifters, so they turn into animals. In the 12 tasks, one of the races of beings, I pulled a little bit, kind of going back to that Egypt, where you have these kind of humanoid animal entities that she works with a lot. In my Viking adult series, The Guardian Speaker, I pulled the lore of something called Fugia, which is every person had 4 parts of self, and one of the parts is your guardian spirit, and they took the shape of an animal. And so again, I have animals in that one. So yes, animals are in all my series as of date.
Oh, good to hear that. John, are you an animal lover, and do the
Yeah, I love animals. I mean, well, I like I told you earlier, my first stories were about our pet cats being fictionalized.
I remember that. So since you're writing,
I have like animals in all my stories for the most part. I didn't have any in Pandora Reborn, my horror novel that I released first, but
well, I'm glad to hear that.
but like in the science fiction ones, I have a stray cat that plays like a key little part in Under a Fallen Sun. I have alien animals that I created and alien people in Dark Metamorphosis that factor into the story at various points.
That's neat.
Oh my gosh.
That's so much fun creating, like, I gotta tell you, that's so much fun creating animal species on other planets. You can take like all these different types of animals and combine them together and create this cool little creature. I do that, like, for example, Calandra has a little pet named Bella that's this alien species that's, the best way to describe it is it's a hybrid of a squirrel and a cat. And it's called a Kala.
Oh. Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, John, because both of you, certainly in your books, had to build an entire world. And I would bet that building a world that you get aliens to have pets is an awful lot of fun. But in the world of these 2 books that we're talking about, what was your favorite thing? Katharine, now we'll start with you. World building, what was your favorite?
Oh. Well, I mean, again, pulling back, these are worlds that I kind of developed loosely as a child. And so for me, it was kind of fun and also frustrating when I had to sit down and figure out, okay, what are the exact names I'm going to stick with? What are the world, the geography, what entities are going to be on which? And so kind of locking them into place. That was fun and challenging. And I had all sorts of diagrams and I had sticky notes up and down the wall, color coded as I was trying to organize everything and trying to solidify, how I was going to approach this. For me, it was pretty daunting story because I went from a series where I just dealt with a kingdom and the surrounding territories to 12 worlds entirely manifested. So a lot of background work, but in the end, it was kind of fun because I knew what entities I was going to bring in, what kind of mythological beings and beasts, and I just had to design worlds that would suit them. So that kind of helped me figure that out, was going from, okay, I'm using, Nordic elves. Well, then I think I want to, fjords and forest and stuff like that in that world. So that was
Absolutely. John, what was your favorite thing that you built in your world?
I really had fun, with doing an alien world. I had fun creating like history and mythology and geography and just all sorts of little details that you kind of take for granted when you're having an Earth-based story. I mean, like if you have a story set in, say, Texas, for example, you kind of take for granted all those different details that you'd have in like a Texas town
Mhm.
that you create from scratch if you're creating like an alien planet. And I tried to take a different approach in creating my main alien world for alien people. For example, Lathos has various tribes and races and nations, kind of like Earth. And I thought it'd be fun to take that approach instead of like the monolithic approach you have like with Star Trek and Star Wars, where it's a one world government and it's a desert planet, or it's an ice planet, or whatever, and everything's just so monolithic. And you think, well, if there's an alien world out there, who says they'd be just like this monolithic hive mind,
Mhm.
one type of geography,
Right.
one type of government, that there'd be diversity there just like there is here on Earth.
Absolutely.
Now, approaching your stories from a sci-fi perspective, did you alter anything in the sense of like what they breathe and their, sense of gravity? Is that similar to Earth, or did you play with that? I just was curious.
I played with it a little bit. Like, for example, on Lathos, I have red be the dominant color in vegetation through their photosynthesis, as opposed to green being the dominant color here on Earth. And I would play with just different little things like that to kind of create, a sense of otherworldness, of alienness. For example, under a fallen sun, the alien race and the Rubrum, they come from a planet orbiting a red dwarf star. And I actually read something interesting that I incorporated into my story, where NASA theorized that planets that orbit a red dwarf star, because of the photosynthesis process, the vegetation is mostly black. And
Huh.
so they had black
That's neat.
trees and black shrubbery, and
Wow.
it was really cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Catherine, what would be different if we woke up in your world?
It depends on which one. In the main one, Wecht, the planet that my character awakens on, that one I did play with gravity. So it's like the air, when she's there, the air has like almost a texture to it. It's very heavy. It's like swallowing water. And so she has to learn how to cope and just get through that discomfort of how just the environment right off the bat is alien than what she expects. And it's a planet with multiple moons, so you can see them in the sky. But again, right off the bat, you can kind of tell that it's not Earth as so she, it's that shock factor of trying to figure out what happened, how'd you get here, and trying to rationalize everything.
Absolutely. Question for both of you. Who should I be recommending your book to? What type of person? Describe them. And if I was going to give it as a gift, what should I put into the gift basket? John, we'll start with you. Just to remind, alien people, who should I buy alien people for? And what should I couple with it as a present?
So, Alien People is perfect for readers who love sci-fi adventure with a dash of thriller in there. And I mean, any sci-fi themed gift would go well with it. But I definitely, and with my novels, I kind of like to vary like approach depending on the genre. So obviously I'd have a different set of readers for Pandora Reborn than Alien People. But yeah, Alien People, if you love sci-fi adventures, kind of like a Star Wars vibe almost, that is the book for you. You're gonna love it.
Fantastic. And Catherine, how about the 12 tasks? Describe your ideal reader.
Well, since it's a young adult high fantasy series, I mean, I could see, people who grew up, and going back to myself and growing up, the Harry Potter fans. I mean, it is a book series that the characters age up in throughout the series. But I would think anybody who loves high fantasy, anybody who loves mythology would enjoy it. I like writing spunky warrior women who, so if you like, a very strong female lead, you would probably enjoy the book as well.
Terrific. And what should we couple with it in the gift package?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Again, I love pulling, mythology from all around. So I could see, different items that reference, anything from elves, witches, dragons, and, that kind of iconic stuff. Of course, if you read the book series, you'll realize sometimes my interpretations are not what people would expect, especially like when it comes to the society that are witches and wizards. They kind of are a little different than the traditional. But if you look at the cover behind the silhouette of the young girl, there's a pillar with ancient kind of pillar. And that actually is the symbol of the Jed in the book series. And that's also the emblem of the Jed in Egypt mythology. So I actually found a necklace that uses it. So I could see something like that going into a gift basket.
Oh, very cool. You found a necklace for that.
Yeah.
Or you could just have them gift that Tutankhamun that's standing behind you.
There you go. The big ticket.
How about some tips for our writers? That was for our readers who should be buying your book. How about for our writers? If you can say one thing to an aspiring writer to inspire them, educate them, or ignite them, Catherine, what would it be?
To inspire, well, for me, if you are interested in, and this is what I've been saying a lot, when you're interested in becoming a writer, start building a following right away. I mean, not only a following can be someone who keeps you honest and on track. If you start your writing process, you can be posting and or talking to your followers, subscribers, what have you, about where you are in the writing process. But that also helps you because when it comes time that you publish, be it traditional, be it indie, whatever, you already have a set of readers waiting for you. So I always say, never too soon to start working on building a following.
Fabulous. John, how about you? What's your tip for our writers out there?
One of my most important philosophies with writing is write your story. Don't worry about what other people tell you to write. Write your story. Only you can tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
You'll as a writer, you'll get a lot of advice saying, "Oh, write to market. Do this genre, cover this trope." No, do your own story. You have a unique voice. Bring your voice into the mix. You should learn the craft. You should learn the mechanics of writing. You should, learn how to be good at creating your story and translating it to the reader. But write your own story. Develop your own voice. Figure out what you want to read and go in that direction.
Fantastic. Great advice from both of you. And before we, Catherine, where are you from? You said New Orleans right now?
Yeah, currently in New Orleans, but I'm from Georgia originally.
Oh, well, I love New Orleans. John, where are you piping in from?
I'm from Utah. I grew up in a little town outside of Park City, which is the home of the Sundance Film Festival.
Yes.
And I live here because work-wise, I'm based here.
Oh, beautiful country there. Well, both of you are in two of my favorite places. I wish I was in both of those right now. So much for all of your hints and for joining us. Let me just remind our viewers of your books and where to find you. Katharine Wibell's The 12 Tasks and many, many other books. So please visit her website at katharineweibellbooks.com, where you can see her other publications, follow along, receive notices about her new books when they're coming out, and be the first to know. And John Coon is the author of Alien People, which is the first of a series, but there's plenty more to check out about John. So please visit him at johncoon.net and learn more about him and all of his works. Thank you so much for joining me on Between the Covers, and happy writing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well, please visit betweenthecoverstv.com. By the way, at betweenthecoverstv.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.